Welcome back, anatomy students. This is also going to be an AP biology topic. Today we start talking about the immune system, which is one of my favorites, but fair warning, it is not the easiest. There's a lot of details. My dream job would be working level 4 CDC with the ugliest of the viruses, but I'm not doing that. I'm teaching, and hopefully one day you will live my dream and go and do something wonderful like that. So today we're going to spend a lot of time talking about the non-specific defenses. We have specific and non-specific. So here's our 3 goals. We want to be able to identify the 3 lines of defense that our body uses to keep us healthy. We want to be able to differentiate between those lines and then list a number of examples that would fall under that category. So first of all, just our comparison of non-specific and specific, then we'll spend the rest of the time just talking about the non-specific. So non-specific is just that. It's very general. So it's going to treat every organism the same. So it'll treat Ebola the same as it will treat the flu virus. So it's going to try to prevent one of those viruses from infecting you, and it treats them in the same fashion. So one of the things about the immune system is that it's innate. Innate means that it's present at birth. You were born with it. Like your skin keeps things from getting in. You were born with your skin, so that's a non-specific. It'll treat Ebola the same as the flu. Specific defenses, we're going to use that word a lot, are very specific. So you acquire these over time. You have to be exposed to the virus in order to have immunity against it. So you won't be immune to the flu until you've seen it before. So you acquire them during your lifetime, and then you treat every organism a little bit different. You might need a B cell, you might need a T cell, different antibodies fit different bacteria. So that is very specific to the pathogen or the antigen present. Okay, so the non-specific defenses is your first line and second line of defense. Try to keep an organism from getting inside of the body. That's the first line of defense. If it doesn't get in, I don't have to defend against it once it's there, right? So the first line we have is our surface barriers. Try to keep poor little Glowy, she doesn't have any skin right here. She's got a hole in her arm, so she's wide open. Any kind of bacteria can get in there. So prevent the microbes from getting in the first place. We have a few mechanical factors, like your skin. That's the number 1. It's a physical barrier that keeps organisms from entering your body. We have mucous membranes covering all of your external openings. So mucous membranes create mucus, and you're a little bit familiar with that. Mucus is sticky, so that's going to trap foreign bodies, microbes, particles, things like that. So all of your external openings, that would be an easy way for things to get into your body. So we have mucous membranes there to protect us from that. We also have, lining many of these tracks, we have hair and cilia on the cells. So you're familiar with the hair in your nose. You also have like cilia all lining your trachea, which is going to act as a filter, and it pushes debris, it pushes microbes, it gets them up and out of your lungs so that they won't create a lung infection. So there are 2 things with that. One, it might push that right out of your nose, right? And you've blown your nose. You know what that looks like. It also might just push it up into your pharynx, which is your throat, which is a common opening between your mouth and your nose. So once it's to the pharynx, it goes back behind it and enters a second tube called the esophagus, which is your food tube. And then those particles, those microbes, they'll go down into the stomach, and then they get digested. So your first line of defense is trying to keep things from getting into your body in the first place. So we have physical barriers that create a wall, basically. And then we also have chemical barriers. So some chemical barriers, we have antimicrobial enzymes. And lysozyme would be one in particular that is found in sweat, saliva, and lacrimal. Lacrimal is tears, fluid. So that lysozyme can destroy bacterial walls, and then you don't have to worry about those microbes. Also, the acidity of our skin, our digestive juices in your stomach, and your urine. Much too acidic for the enzymes that function inside of bacteria. So if their enzymes aren't functioning, neither will any of their metabolic functions. So the first line, try to keep it from getting inside the body at all. The second line, if those microbes do get in the body, our body is still going to treat all of these organisms in the same fashion. So we have cells and we have chemicals that can treat every organism the same. So our cellular factors would be like your phagocytic cells, white blood cells. We talked about neutrophils and macrophages, which work inside the bloodstream, or they get out into the tissue spaces and they gobble up. You can see right here, this bacterium is getting gobbled up, and that would be the job of the phagocytic cells. So we also have natural killer cells. Natural killer cells are just a little bit more specific, and then they kind of categorize what they will be able to attack. So they can attack virus-infected cells, and they attack tumor cells, so cells that have gone on with uncontrollable growth. In this picture, you can see the phagocytic cell with all of his little extensions, and what he's doing is he's creating something called perforin, and perforin is a protein, and the protein will polymerize, so it joins all together and it creates a pore in the cell membrane, and then water rushes in and the cell ruptures. The cell will burst. So it's not killing the virus directly, it's killing it indirectly because it's killing the cell that the virus is housed in. So continuing on with viral infections, we have these antimicrobial factors called interferons. So right in that word you have the word interfere. So what do interferons do? They interfere with viral reproduction. So again, it's not attacking the virus itself, but it's going to prevent the virus from replicating. So in this graphic on the left, I can see that this cell has been infected by these viruses. So that's it's gene regulation, AP Bio. So that's going to turn on a section of the DNA that is going to create the protein interferon. Interferons will then go and spread to all of the neighboring cells, like this one here. And then that will turn on a section of this DNA that will produce a block so the virus can't get into the nucleus, and if it can't get into the nucleus, it can't make its own proteins, and it won't be able to replicate and take over your cells. So there's a couple key AP biology topics. You have cell signaling, you have signal transduction, you have gene regulation. It's all very exciting stuff. So our chemical factors, you have interferons, you have complement proteins. Complement proteins are called complement because they work in association with others. You have about 20 different kinds of complement proteins, and they do several different things. So you'll probably hear the term complement fixation. So they might aid antibody connection. They might make it easier for phagocytic cells to gobble up the cell, and they might work similar to interferons, where they work in association and they come together and make a pore in the cell, the same as the interferon did. Fluid rushes in and the cell will lyse. They also stimulate the release of histamine, which aids in inflammation, which is going to be a topic we're going to talk about in another slide. So the other factors, so you got cells, you got chemicals, and then you got like processes. So we have two processes. We have the inflammatory response and we have fever. So inflammatory response, we've all had some cut that has then become inflamed, right? So we can recognize that it's gotten red, swollen, it hurts, maybe it's hot. So what's happening? The injured cells are releasing histamine. Histamine is a vasodilator. So vessel dilation, getting bigger, right? So everything that's happening is because of that vasodilation. So the blood vessel gets bigger. The blood vessel is carrying your blood supply, right? Your blood is red. The closer it is to the surface, I can see the red. Our blood also carries our heat. So again, vasodilating puts that heat closer to the surface. So that creates the first two symptoms of the inflammatory response, which is redness and heat. The other two, swelling and pain, happen also because of the vasodilation. It increases the permeability of the cells. So if they have little tiny pores and then you stretch them, the pore is rather large. So what can come out of those pores now that couldn't come out before? Plasma and your white blood cells. So we talked about the lymphatic system already, returning that leaked plasma to the blood supply. So this is one of the ways it's getting out. It's leaking out the pores of the vessels. So why would we want that to happen? Because in our blood is our white blood cells. So that brings with it white blood cells to the area. White blood cells then can gobble up the infection and contain it so that it doesn't go and spread to the rest of your body. So this is showing you the inflammatory response. We've got a pin stuck into our skin, and then that's carrying with it many bacteria. The injured cells release chemicals. Cells come to that area where the chemicals are. That's called chemotaxis. Taxis is a movement toward, usually positive taxis, is a movement toward a chemical. So cells or whole organisms, depending on the situation, will respond positively by moving towards that chemical. In this case, it's white blood cells moving toward the histamine that is being released, and other chemicals as well, and so that's a positive chemotaxis. So you can see the vasodilation, the difference in the size of these two vessels here, getting much bigger. White blood cells are diapedicing. Diapedece means to move out of the cell, squeeze out of the vessels. And then the white blood cells come to the area and are able to eat up the infection so it doesn't cause further problems. You don't want infections getting into your blood supply. So the last of your nonspecific defenses is fever. So we all know when we're sick, we get a higher temperature than normal. Why does that happen? So one of the chemicals that white blood cells can produce and release is called a pyrogen. Pyro has to do with fire, gen, producing. So we're producing fire, which is that fever, right? So what happens, that pyrogen moves up into the brain, and the hypothalamus, which is in charge of our temperature, our thermostat, gets reset so that it thinks the normal temperature is higher than 98.6. So your body temperature rises until it reaches that normal, what the hypothalamus thinks is normal at that point, temperature. So why would our body want to increase our temperature when we're already feeling horrible? There's two things that happens. One, it's going to inhibit microbial growth because your liver will hold on to iron and zinc, which the bacteria need to multiply. So that inhibits its growth. The other thing, our metabolic rate speeds up. One of the things that our metabolism is in charge of is making more cells. So we're able to repair our tissues at a quicker rate because mitosis is happening at a quicker rate because of the higher temperature. So you see in this graphic here, we have the bacteria in our body. Leukocyte, which are white blood cells, are going to release pyrogens. Pyrogens travel then through the bloodstream to the hypothalamus, and the hypothalamus says, whoa, 98.6 is not normal, I'm too cold. And it speeds it up. It turns it up. Okay. So here's our recap for the day. You wanted to be able to list the 3 lines of defenses. So you got surface barriers, cellular, and chemical defenses, and then the immune system we'll talk about on another day. You should be able to differentiate between nonspecific and specific. The name tells you what they do. Nonspecific is very general, attacks everything in the same fashion. Specific, every organism gets a different attack. So you should also be able to identify at least 3 of the factors. So surface barriers, just think about what is inside, or what does your body have that keeps things from getting in it. So you don't have to memorize this list. You should be able to think, if I have skin, bacteria is not going to get in through the skin. Inside my openings, I have mucus. I have hair cells. I have antimicrobial enzymes in the secretions that my body makes, which is also very acidic. And then our second line, if it does get in, what are some generic things I have that can take care of it? So you should right away think of white blood cells, more specifically phagocytic cells. We have natural killer cells that affect our viruses. Interferons, also attacking viruses. And antimicrobial proteins, the complement. And then we have inflammatory and fever, which we've all experienced. So that's your recap of the nonspecific defenses. We'll come back and talk about specific another day. Here's a cute little monkey at the zoo, and I hope you have a great day. Thanks for listening.